The Gilded Age Season 2, Episode 3, Head to Head, is over, but we are just getting started here on Post Show Recaps. I'm Marissa Garza, and joining me once again is the one and only Mr. Jason Reed. Thanks for letting me summon you, Mr. Reed. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Of course, Marissa, always happy to be here. I just finished watching a play, as those watching the video can tell from my background. I just figured such good Wi-Fi in this
nice
playhouse, so I figured I'd take the podcast from here today.
How was the play?
Oh, it was a little bit of a snooze fest, but we met the playwright, and he is a hoot, let me tell you. He's something else.
I can't wait to hear about it. I'd love to hear your review. We, of course, are here covering the Gilded Age, and you can find all of our coverage at postshowrecaps.com/Gilded Age or in the HBO feed itself. Or if you'd like ad-free versions of this podcast, you can go patreon.com/postshowrecaps. Or as Jason mentioned and alluded to, we are also on YouTubes. The YouTubes. That's what we call it, right? Like that's where it is. The YouTubes. Yeah, just search for us there and you'll be able to find us if you're curious. Jason's always mixing it up in terms of what his background is. So if you're ever curious, check us out there. Well, Jason,
I like to be in theme, you know?
Yeah, I know you do. We didn't have video when we covered Dear Edward, but I really did enjoy your exit row background most of the time. It was great.
Yeah, that was just for you and me.
I know.
When when we were doing the good old hijack. It was hijack.
Yeah, that was hijack. That was for hijack.
Dear Edward would have been like a sad face in the background all the time. That was such a depressing.
We had a lot of plane coverage back to back.
Yeah, we stocked a lot of plane and stuff.
Well, there were no planes in this episode. What did you think overall?
I thought it was fun. I thought it was a little bit of a step down from the previous episode, but I mean, how could you top the previous episode with all of the hookups, the hot stuff, the Miss Turner of it all? But I thought this is a step down, but it was still a really good episode. I thought a lot of movement on the storylines we've been tracking so far.
Yeah, when I was taking notes, I was like, I don't know how we can fit this into a quick plot recap because there's so many different storylines happening. So I feel like it's a good setup. I see a lot of mess was set up in this particular episode. And some really good drama, specifically with the Russells. Between the Russells, we had just declared them couples goals. And now, I don't know. We'll see how they come out of this one.
They still are pretty relatable to me because I felt my life in the Russells little quarrel in a way. And it really kind of speaks to even modern times how couple fights go, you know?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in depth because I think it's a really good example of their marriage and how they.
I want to be clear. I don't relate fully. No maid servant has ever shown me her boobies, and then I did not tell my wife about it. None of that has ever happened. Just to be clear.
Noted. It's noted in all forms of the podcast.
Just so I can clear the air. That particular situation has never happened to me. I meant more of like you didn't tell your wife something you probably should have, and now she's mad at you for it, and then you got to make it up to her later.
Yeah. Also, before we get into it, what are your thoughts on soup for lunch?
Gross. Soup in all its forms, I don't approve of. It's always like, especially cold soup. No, not doing that. Even hot soup, not doing that either. Campbell's chunky can go kick rocks. No
You're
soup.
Like literally no soup for you.
No. Not even when I'm sick. I'm a well-known picky eater. So I just don't do soup in general. It seems nasty. It's like flavored water with chunks of meat. No thanks. Not doing that. I'm good.
I really do. Now I might be looking at soup a little differently. I
know which part of the chicken that chicken bits are coming from. You don't know what that is. Not having soup. Not doing soup.
All right, so don't get Jason.
Sorry, I don't want to get on a tangent about talking about ourselves. Apparently.
Oh yeah, we got to keep it focused. Keep it focused. Yeah. But yeah, soup was a big topic this episode as well. So I just wanted to get your thoughts.
And the noise it makes when you eat it. No.
Well, I feel like Oscar's reaction was something we should talk about later on. All right, let's not delay it anymore. Let's jump into our quick plot recap. Like I said, I did my best to capture the major events of this episode, but there's a lot to go through, which we will do so afterwards. So this episode is titled Head to Head. The opera war continues with Mrs. Russell throwing a lunch in support of the Metropolitan. She's even allowed Mrs. Winterton to attend. Don't worry, though. Bertha has a plan for both the opera house and how to handle her former lady's maid. When it comes to the opera, she confidently announces that the Met will start their season the exact same day as the Academy of Music, forcing people to make a choice. In conversation with Mrs. Winterton, however, her confidence is rattled when she learns not only does Mrs. Winterton know the Duke of Buckingham, she also has a secret with Mr. Russell. Yeah.
Scandal.
Yeah.
The face of the ire of Bertha at that moment has to be captured forever.
It was so good. Mrs. Russell sees this as an act of betrayal, and Mr. Russell will have to find a way to make it up to her. Across the street, another opera lunch, lots of lunches. Another opera lunch is underway, this one with Team Old Money. Mrs. Astor has gathered the Van Ryans to help her figure out how to deal with Mrs. Russell. Arriving secretly from across the street, Mr. McAllister breaks the news to the group that the Met is planning to open on the same sacred day as the Academy. This does not sit well with Mrs. Astor, and she asks Mrs. Van Ryan to write to the older members and let them know that if they get a box at the Metropolitan, they will lose their box at the Academy. Seems like Mr. McAllister has got himself in the middle of quite the pickle. Which side will he ultimately choose? Excited to hear that. Yeah, probably. He's like going to work it. Excited to hear that Mr. Fortune is traveling to Alabama to visit the Tuskegee Institute to report on the building of a new dormitory. Peggy wants in on the story. She makes quite the case for herself, and Mr. Fortune ends up granting her request. While this trip seems to brighten Peggy's days and serve as a distraction from her grief, it's not without its own danger. Marion warns Peggy that Mr. Fortune is a married man. Peggy's own mother reminds her that she's never been south of the Mason-Dixon line, which is a thing.
Precarious at best.
Yeah. Here's hoping Peggy can write a great story and doesn't find herself in too much trouble. The Union battle is heating up as George Russell welcomes Henderson, a Union rep, to his home for lunch.
And bribes.
So many lunch and bribes. This could have been called Ladies Who Lunch. Thinking he could offer Henderson a job in management and make the problem go away, Henderson refuses. This interaction only strengthens the Union's resolve to win in the end. Like, they're even willing to die for it.
No matter what.
No matter what. Yet another lunch was also held in this episode, this one to bring together Cousin Dashiell and Marion. Dashiell has written to Aunt Agnes about his fondness for Marion, and Aunt Agnes very much approves. It also helps that Aunt Ada wants to see her rector, and Ada uses this opportunity to prepare a special menu, which pays off in the end as the rector asks Ada to join him at an art gallery on a date. Love, opera, unions, soup. So much can happen at a Gilded Age lunch. What do you think, Jason?
Listen, the opera wars are heating up. One of the most probably low stake wars you will ever see, but it's heating up. Which opera house will win? I mean, talk about a war of the upper crust. Talk about just a first class war. I love it. I need to see it. I want to see it. I want someone to die over this opera war.
Whoa! Like a real war. Like, you want this to be like, come
like
to arms.
Someone cut someone else with like an opera program or something, or a pair of
like
opera
a paper
glasses.
cut turns into a staph infection, and then or that person gets like dysentery or something, and then
you don't have good medical care. We don't have great medical care in the 1800s.
Yeah,
so,
it's the 1800s. Exactly. I feel like this is the equivalent of being a Chicago baseball fan and cheering for the Cubs and the Sox. Like, this is the vibe that I'm getting, is like, you have to choose one. Crosstown Classic is coming. Which one are you going to go to? Who are you going to cheer for? But I've never had the amount of money that these people have, so I don't know the stakes that are involved.
someone's like, are you going to go to a Beyonce show or are you going to go to a
Or
Taylor
Taylor
Swift show?
Swift. Yeah, exactly.
How are you bankrupting your bank account? Which one will you choose to spend all of your money that you ever earned on to make these rich people even richer?
And how will Mrs. Russell get Beyonce to sing in her house? Like, that's really, really a question I would have.
Beyonce could be bought, I think, for a certain price.
Well, speaking of Mrs. Russell, I mean, I don't know how we can't start with this whole Bertha George Mrs. Winterton news reveal that we saw at the opera lunch. So Bertha and Mrs. Winterton have a conversation, and Bertha's all like, remember when you were my lady's maid? And Mrs. Winterton's like, yeah, oh, you didn't fire me because you thought I was sleeping with your husband? Oh, bye.
He said, no, I fired you because I thought you were going to sleep with my son, who now is shacking up with an older lady. So maybe I should just let you have him in the first place. Bertha came over there, thought that she had the upper hand, thought that she had the better cards. But she got smacked in the face with like reality. Like, no, girl, you better go talk to your husband because he got something to tell you. Listen, we all knew that George's, even in the moment for me, it was weird for him not to be like, you will not believe what this lady Turner just did. And we all knew that was coming back to bite him. And now it definitely has.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, the facial expressions in this interaction between both women were just like top notch, top notch.
You can see the moment where Turner realizes that she has something now. She's like, oh, for real? Like, okay, I got something for you, girl. I got something for you. And we talked about last week how there was going to be this not a truce, but kind of a momentary, like, you won't destroy me, I won't destroy you. But I don't think Bertha at the time realized that Turner had something that could, destroy her. Because even though George didn't do anything with Turner, just the fact that this happened could ruin them, because we've seen these little itty bitty facts about things can just totally blow up your social standing.
Well, they are in the business of using information to their advantage. And like, from Bertha's perspective, this was information that George did not give her. Like, regardless, I think she like understands and trusts the fact that her husband would not have done anything.
Yeah.
But the fact that he kept it from her, it's like, I could have used that to do something. Also, you put me in a very embarrassing position of myself being naked in front of the woman who was naked in front of you. Like, she's there getting dressed and washed by this woman, and like, that's really embarrassing. So I get where she's coming from in terms of this feeling like a betrayal, and I also could see like the love in that confrontation that they have, and how she kind of like brings it to George's attention. But before we talk about that, I did want to also mention, did you notice, I'm sure you did, like her little wink wink to the guy on the side, like I think his name's Peter. Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, he's definitely got to be spying on the inside and giving Mrs. Winterton some information. And so like Bertha is way in over her head on this one. I think she's not that she's in over her head, but she's not in the position she thought she was.
Yeah, we're all mole patrol. We got we got a little bit of a spy in the house, a little bit of back and forth information. So I for sure caught that. I think the show wanted us to catch that.
Yeah.
And Peter is obviously going to be a little snake, a little douchebag. But yeah, that was very interesting. I was like, ooh, what's that? So I'm hoping that there's something more comes of that other than what we got later in the episode.
He was like quite the fan downstairs too. Like, she wrote to him and told him blah, 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 blah. And that's not all she did. Okay. Like, so I wonder if, honestly, this is me just thinking with a soap opera brain. I'm like, I wonder if they have a thing going on. Like,
wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
So we'll keep our eyes on that one. But yes. So Bertha gets this information from Mrs. Winterton, and then has to give a tour of her house to Mrs. Fish. And then later, it's like, okay, let me talk to George about this. And this acting by Carrie Coon was just like, I could feel it. I felt it for her. I was like, yeah, Carrie, I know where you're coming from this. And then George's response, he was so truthful and just like so honest, and also couldn't see and understand the reaction that he was getting. What did you think of the scene?
I love when Bertha came and she's like, "You got something to tell me, George?"
I got bad news too today.
George's like, I don't know. Which George, you should have seen this coming. Honestly, don't act like you don't know. Like, honestly, when they found the night that they found out that Turner was Mrs. Winterton, he should be like, listen, I got something to tell you that came up that I didn't think was going to be relevant, but it is now. Even so that Bertha could just have a defense prepared, so that when she and Turner met, she would have some smart alky comment to throw back at Turner and not be surprised by this news. And the fact that George is like, well, I didn't want to get her fired because you enjoyed her dressing you so much. I'm like, that George, that's not an excuse. The fact that you didn't want to, as he says, blow the house up. I mean, from the sense I get from this show is that these servant people are very valuable and they don't want to take. Oh, I don't want to take the time to train a maid. It's such a 1% high class problem, but it seems like it's actually a thing in their world.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting excuse that George had. I just don't think George has a good excuse for doing this. It was so weird to me when it happened, and it's still weird to me now.
So from Bertha's perspective, I'd be like, okay, you didn't tell me when it first happened. That's one thing. Second, you didn't tell me when she was reintroduced into our lives. Third, you knew she was coming into our house. There's so many levels of betrayal from her perspective in this. And I think George underestimated because yes, he's a businessman and she's like a businesswoman in her own way, but the way that they deal with information and the way that they make deals and stuff is much different. There's a lot of nuance in Bertha's world. Like you can get a no that means a yes that means a no. And so she needs to have as much information as possible to put her best foot forward. And as he realizes when he has Henderson over, he needs her to get through the social circle. So at that point, they're not exactly on the same team. And this is the first time we've really seen it. So I thought it was pretty interesting.
Well, I mean, I think in the end, they're still on the same team, right? Because we've seen this before. When the other is needed, they will put down their petty squabbles to step up and be there for the other. And even in George's attitude after it's all brought, if I'm George, I'm like, you know what, I am so sorry, my bad. George's like, I mean, I guess I can admit I did something wrong, but get over it. It's kind of his thing.
He's like, I don't know what else to say.
I mean, you should be groveling at this point, man, because you this is big. This is a big deal. But I don't think he was apologetic enough to Bertha. Let's just say that.
Yeah. It did pay off for Gladys though. In the middle.
Gladys is like, I gotta get my parents fighting more often because this is awesome. I get asked no questions. I get asked no who you going, what you doing. I get to go everywhere I want. So I'm sure Gladys is just trying to plot to figure out how to get her parents fighting more often.
It was great because she was like, "What's going on?" And I love this is not my favorite response, but it is very timely for the 1880s. Your mother's very tired. It's we're not even going to talk about. She's she's just so tired. Yeah. Oh, just let her rest. But yeah, go out to the play. I'm not going to ask you any questions. But I did appreciate how throughout this episode, both Bertha and George were like, "This is our fight. This is not the kids. We're not bringing the kids into this. We will figure this out." The kids had nothing really going on in the house that worked out for them this time. Mm-mm. Larry was gallivanting through Newport, and Gladys was ready to go to the play. But I appreciated the acknowledgement that they weren't going to basically bring the whole family into it.
Did your eyebrow perk up when you heard that Gladys was going to the play with John Adams? I was like, is John? Is she going to be trying to be sweet on John and get let down later?
I have a feeling. John Adams is very confident that if she asks for anything that he's going to let her down, which I totally think could happen. But what does that signal to the Russells? Mm-hmm. Exactly. Some opportunities for scandal. At the end of this whole conversation moment, George being in the doghouse pretty much the whole episode, Bertha realizes, okay, I have to get to know the Duke of Buckingham if I'm going to take down Mrs. Winterton and also get money for my opera house. I need to be in on this somehow. So she basically walks into George's office and is like, yo, get me an invite, get me an introduction to the Duke of Buckingham. He's like, how am I supposed to do that? She's like, you'll figure it out. Like, this is what you got to do. And then we'll talk.
The Russell's plight throughout the whole episode was so relatable because, you know, when you get into a fight with your significant other, especially if you know you're wrong, and like the way George slunk into Bertha's room after they had their big fight, it's like hey boo, what's up? Are we okay yet? You speaking to me yet? We good? Like, no, I still can't stand you. I love when he's like, how long is this gonna take? Like, how long are you gonna be mad at me? And she's like, well, sweetheart, it's not like the influenza. It's going to take a little bit of time.
And he's like so dramatic. He's like, it feels like a death sentence.
Dude, it's been less than a day. It's been 2 hours. I have been not talked to for 2 days in my life before by my wife. Okay, live with it. Be in the moment. And then for Bertha to come to George and be like, all right, you want some forgiveness? Here you go. It's like, you know, I tell my wife, yeah, I forgot to pick up your medicines. Like, oh, so what are you gonna do to you know, to let me forgive you? All right, I'm gonna take you out. Will that help? Will that help with the forgiveness? She's like, maybe we'll see. Like, yeah, get a like guarantee. Like, just do it. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. We'll see.
We'll talk about it. We'll see how it is on that day. We'll see if you've done anything between now and then.
Yeah, but if you don't do it, it's definitely gonna be a problem. So I suggest you do it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I don't think that they will ultimately reconcile like tomorrow, like in the next episode or anything like that. But I think we will see a reconciliation. They love each other.
Yeah, I kind of felt like it was squashed just by Bertha coming to him and asking him about this. I feel like the fact that he is going to, you know, get the connections needed. I think it's probably gonna be water under the bridge at this point.
Do you think like she'll learn anything else that might? Like, what else is there to learn, I guess? Yeah. But Mrs. Winterton could like come up with more with lies.
Turnerton is definitely going to
Turnerton.
Yeah, Turnerton's definitely gonna lie, probably, and say that George did, you know, they did the, you know,
things.
They did the do.
They did things. Yeah.
Because I just think Turner just wants to turn stuff on its head, unless, you know, she's so scared about being revealed as a former lady servant or whatever she would be called.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, would you like to be spoiled on the opera war through history?
Yes, tell me a story.
Let me tell you a story. A long time ago in the 1800s, there was an Academy of Music and there was the Metropolitan Opera House. It's not the Met as in the Met Gala. The Met is the art museum. So different places. But this war of building up each opera house was between the Astors. So that's, you know, properly placed in our show, and the Vanderbilts, which many people have said the Russells are modeled after. So this is straight out of the history books in that way. It's a classic battle between new money and old money. They're running out of space in the academy that becomes much and much more prestigious. But then there's all these people with this new money. They're like, oh, we'll just build something new. Like, we don't need you anymore. And the old money people are like, what do you mean you don't need us anymore?
It's tradition.
Whoa. Our opening date is sacred. This is going on in like 1882, 83. The Metropolitan Opera House was very successful and actually ended up closing the Academy of Music in 1886. So it only took 3-ish years for the downfall of the Academy. Unfortunately, there was a fire in 1892 that closed down the Metropolitan Opera House. So does anybody
know where Miss Astor was at the moment that the fire was set?
Lena, she's like, no.
Yeah, have we checked her whereabouts? I mean, that might be the first place I'd look.
Yeah, so I don't know if the show's going to go all the way to 1892, but it's interesting to see just how close they are in the portrayal of this.
I mean, this
and
season
Mr. McAllister was also in between both of them.
In real life, you mean?
In real life.
I mean, this season seems to be all about the opera houses. After the season, will we even ever see the opera houses again, or will this just be like, we just did that for a season? We'll mention it in season 3, but we're not going to stay there for all the time.
I think the opera is the Red Cross of the season. Like, where's Clara Barton this season?
Nowhere.
What's she doing? Nobody.
Yeah.
We don't need to donate money to her anymore. What up?
Yeah.
So, we'll see. but that's your little history spoilers on the opera war.
Okay.
Oh, good. Thanks. Our friend Peggy. Oh boy, Peggy. Peggy. Okay. I love her. She's so pure of heart.
Yeah.
But she's also very naive for being born and raised above the Mason-Dixon line in the 1800s. She wants to tell stories of Black people during this time to help Black people. Like this is, and I totally get it. But she thinks she knows what life is like for all Black people in this situation.
Yeah. She's grown up in a pretty privileged life for someone of her station status in that time, whereas she probably hasn't had to suffer a lot of racism. We know that she has suffered some because we've seen it in these kind of subtle ways, that she's refused cab service, she's looked at weird in stores, but I don't think she's ever experienced something as harsh and as blunt as racism in the Deep South, specifically back then. I mean, still today, some could argue.
Yeah.
But yeah, she just doesn't know. It's not like she can hop on Twitter or any other platform to really see for herself. And she's not really believing her mom, I don't think. She's like, yeah, it'll be fine. I'll stay with my group. Promise, mom, I'll be safe. But I just don't think she's ready for what she's about to witness. She's grown up, as not even just a Black woman, but a Black woman that in a higher sect of society, as far as the class that her dad is in, by owning a pharmacy. So she's never even been really a poor Black woman in a certain way. So I think she's not ready for what she's about to see. And I don't know if I'm ready for what the show is about to show me when she and Mr. Fortune go down to Alabama. So I'm gonna brace myself for that episode for sure.
Yeah, we had talked about how we wanted to still see like a realistic portrayal of Peggy's life after she moved back into 61st Street. And I don't know if we just, so everyone knows, I don't think we wished for this heavy-handed portrayal of life. And I think this is just my perception. It has to be hard to constantly be seeing those stories if you're from the Black community in that situation. So I'm hoping they handle it with care, and hopefully we'll get it without they'll walk a good line. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, I think the show will handle it well. I think they have some guiding hands behind the scenes that will help with that. So I don't think it's going to be anything too exploitative. I think it's going to, and the hard part will be that it's going to be accurate. It's going to be right. Yeah. It is hard to see, but honestly, it's in media a lot now, so it's not anything I haven't seen before. It's just we're kind of hit over the head with it sometimes, so it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it in that episode. But I'm here for it. I'll watch it.
Well, and I think it's interesting that she's paired to go down there, first of all, with Mr. Fortune, who is married. So first of all, there's that scandal for this time.
I will never forgive them for ruining what could have been the best relationship on the show by making Mr. Fortune have a wife.
Okay, but are they?
Last episode.
But are they? Okay, so this is what I see. I see that Peggy is going to need to be comforted after what she sees. And I feel like Mr. Fortune, because we learned this episode was a slave, is going to be in a vulnerable position. So I'm not saying something, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was something. I just think there are ingredients in play for a soup of some sort to happen.
Ew, soup, gross. Listen, if I was Mrs. Fortune and Mr. Fortune came home and was like, yeah, I'm going to Alabama with Peggy, I said, okay, well, then you're going with me too, because I'm tagging along. All right.
Family trip. We're all going.
Yeah. Listen, I think it's destined. And listen, Peggy's mom probably be like, yeah, I'm gonna come too. So everyone's gonna run the whole time. But yeah, I mean, I think it's destined that we're gonna get some type of hookup with Mr. Fortune and Peggy in Alabama. I would say that's definitely coming down the pipeline, because they have really been selling the chemistry that they've been giving us with these two is undeniable. So I think that it's definitely going to happen. It's going to be scandalous.
Well, and Marion, when they have that little talk in Marion's bedroom, and Peggy's like, "Mr. Fortune's my employer," oink oink. Like,
I would never.
She's crushing. She's crushing, I think, a little bit on him, and I think Marion knows it. But the thing is like when Marion was in this position last season by traveling with a man. I forget where they went, on the Red Cross trip or whatever. Peggy went with her. I don't see Marion saying, hey, I'll go with you. Like, let me get on the train to Alabama.
Mary said, you going where? You going where? No, I'm good. I would never even think about going that far. So I'm good. I'm staying here. Marion would be so scandalized if she went down there. She would have no idea what she's in for, but she's good. She'll just stay where she is.
But cousin Dashiell's here, so I have to stay,
Boring ass cousin Dashiell.
Yeah, so it's a real like serious warning. I do just want to point out some things that Peggy's mom does tell her, like she's saying, like, don't look white people in the eye. Basically just keep your head down, stay safe. And she's like, Mom, I know how to behave myself. And she's like, no, you don't understand. Once you cross that line, you are no longer human. And as the person who watches a lot of historical dramatizations and also someone who has studied history, I've never really heard content relay that in this way. And it's, I think, the dramatic way. Like, usually there's some sort of flowers around how people saw Black people below the Mason-Dixon line of just like there was inequality. This is more than inequality. So while it was like a very blunt statement, I was appreciative that they like didn't cut they cut straight through all of the historical BS that has been put around how this has been portrayed previously.
Yeah, and I mean, from a like, this is what 1883, right? This is that time. The lynching of Emmett Till was in 1955. So, and he was lynched for a perceived slight to a white woman. So that should tell you, even that's even almost 100, like 70 years before the lynching of Emmett Till. That should tell you how that area was, and was even long before the Emmett Till lynching went down. So that should tell you something right there.
Well, and we even have like the Breonna Taylors of our time that are still faced similar things. So it's been going on, for over 100 years. So yay, think about that one. I'm like, I did want to talk a little bit about Tuskegee University because I think we're going to spend some time there in the coming episodes. So my exposure to Tuskegee University was through college. I went to school to be a history teacher, so I did learn a lot of Booker T. Washington's theories about education and what he did at Tuskegee University. It was founded in 1881, so just a little bit earlier. And graduates from Tuskegee did agree to teach for 2 years. And this was part of the mission of the school. When researching this, I did find it interesting that this was formed as a result of an election. W.F. Foster, who is a white man, spoke to Lionel Adams, who is a Black leader, and said, hey, if you can persuade Black people to vote for me, I'll give you money for a school. So this is how it all started. This is still happening in politics today in terms of how minorities are used for political capital, political gain.
Almost sounds like a promise to eliminate student debt to go.
Almost
do it. Just saying, just throwing that out there. But I'm gonna shut up now.
yeah. So I thought that was interesting because I mean, in the South at that time, we could it's not New York. So I'm just trying to put myself in Lionel Adams' shoes of I'll take whatever sure, fine. Give me something. I will do what I can to get money. He ended up hiring Booker T. Washington to be the principal. They bought a former plantation to put the school on. And it was focused on agriculture. So that's why you hear Mr. Fortune saying, like, you really think our future is like milking cows? Like, that's what you want us to be doing to Peggy? But that was the focus of their curriculum at the time. There's also a lot, which I know will not be covered in the show, but I encourage you to do your own research on the Tuskegee syphilis experiment and all of the atrocities around that. It was also brought up in some Marvel properties recently as well. So there's some fictionalized content.
Falcon the Winter Soldier, if you want to check that out.
Yep. So that was like the encyclopedic version of that. Do you have any Tuskegee information you'd like to share, Jason? I just ran through random stuff.
I think you covered it pretty well. I don't have anything else to add. I think you covered it.
I think it'll be interesting to see their trip down there. And I do appreciate that they are highlighting this history. I do think it's really interesting how explicit they have to be with this history, because they know who the audience of the show is. And they specifically have told us who Booker T. Washington is, that graduates have to teach for 2 years. Like, they're really giving us like the high school version of that history. And they're not doing that with like the opera war. You know what I mean? Like, so that's just one thing that I'm keeping in mind of, like, they're like, we want you to know Black history. We are going to tell you Black history. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a mixture, kind of a mixed bag. The trip to Alabama is going to probably be some stuff that's going to be hard to watch, but I think it's going to also be educational. I think it's going to be a eye-opening, kind of examination of the Black experience back in that time, especially in the South. So I think in that aspect of it, I'll be intrigued to see how they handle it.
Yep, we shall see. All right, on another front of the show, I tried to make a connection, failed. But so we had the union rep come to visit Mr. Russell and have lunch. And Mr. Russell was feeling pretty like cool, confident, collected, thought he could totally handle this. He has told, I forget the name of his like right-hand man, but it was like, every man has a price. I can buy it. We just got to find out what it is. So he's feeling
Mr. Clay.
Yes, Mr. Clay. Like, it's like, I got this.
But I really have to question the strategy, right, of bringing Mr. Henderson to New York and showing him my big ass fancy house that his blood, sweat, and tears have paid for, and now I'm gonna sit you down in my nice fancy house and tell you I'm not gonna be able to pay your people more. I don't know what to tell you, Henderson. I don't got it. And while I'm sitting in my huge palatial mansion, I just don't know how smart that was.
What, you're telling me it wasn't setting him up for success?
Like, no, you should have like rented a rundown house, like, yeah, Henderson, see, this is all I'm working with right now. I don't really have anything I don't have anything more I can give you. But no, he had to bring him to his huge mansion, his huge eyesore of a house, and be like, yeah, sorry, can't pay you anymore. We're I'm short on cash. No, bad idea.
Yeah, it was not great. And I loved that Henderson knew it. Like, from the moment he kind of walked in, he like looked around. He was like, okay, I've never been in a house like this before. Mm-hmm. Like, I also liked how he's explaining that he has 6 children and his wife is a seamstress, and Mrs. Russell, who does show up, she's like, I admire her.
Bertha's like, we have so much trouble with 2 that we don't really, do anything for ourselves. We have our maids people do it. We have so much trouble parenting too. You don't really even do anything for them. The Hendersons have to do everything themselves. They don't have servant people to help them out. So I thought that was just so interesting from Bertha.
Why do you think they have 6 kids? Like, to do the stuff.
Some stress relief. Oh yeah, they need the kids to help them out around the house. Stoke the fires, to put the tea on. Also, some stress relief from the other kids you have helps make the new kids. You know what I'm saying?
It's the circle of life. So it's not working out great. He thinks that he's like, I can't pay you more because of the markets. It'll change them. Here's the thing. I don't know that much, but I know the markets will figure themselves out. Like that much I know about stocks. Like they will readjust. So this argument of like, I can't pay you, I'm at the will of the markets. It's just bull. It's bull crap.
You ever heard of a stimulus, Mr. Russell? Like
Yeah.
it will help the economy.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. You'll be all good.
Yeah. So Henderson sees his way out, and we do get a little glimpse of his conversation with his union brothers after his visit to Mr. Russell's, and they are ready. They're like, look, he's going to try to divide us. We have to be ready to strike. And then Henderson's like, and even die for it.
I had the same reaction who I'm assuming his wife had when he said that. It's like, what you say? You gonna die for this? How is that a proper reaction? Like, how's that a proper thing to say right now? How are you gonna die for this? Who's gonna kill you for this? Who's gonna kill you over this?
People like in this time, the striking was not like what we just saw with the SAG-AFTRA and writers strikes. It was not like a protected time. Like there were people that died. P.S. Congrats to SAG-AFTRA on their agreement. We are very glad that you're going to be getting paid.
Now get back to work in there.
Yeah. Hopefully with like better stuff. Like we all like. Hopefully you're all reinvigorated. I'm very excited to see what comes out of it. But anyway, it can get violent during this time. But I think what's interesting is the unions are seeing the collective effort and how that can be progressive while like from a collective effort. And Mr. Russell is just seeing it from an individual. Like I have a lot of capital, and he doesn't realize that like his amount of capital is just distributed through many people. So even though it's like I have all of this money, they're like, we have all these people. You're just one man. Oh, we're gonna win.
And it's rare. It's been rare for us in this series to see George underestimate someone or underestimate something. And I think this is the first time we're really going to see him maybe up against something that he wasn't really prepared to really handle. And I think he's going to be surprised at how dedicated these people are to getting what's right.
Yes. What did you think of that line when he said every man has his price? Do you think it was some foreshadowing of some sort? This is a very leading question. Wink wink.
I think that's probably what George just thinks of everyone. That's what George's experience has been up till now. I don't think he has ever come up against such a hard rock as the union people. But what were you leading to with this leading question?
He is a man. He's going to have a price. So George is all because he's like every man has a price. So I think like in this case to end a strike, he's going to have a price that he's going to have to pay to give workers money. So I was like, George, did you forget you're a man? You just said every man has a price. Like, did you forget that? Like, you're just, I don't know. That's my hypothesis and my hope, quite honestly, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Get ready, George. You're going to have to sell a couple of those chandeliers in a couple of your ballrooms to maybe to pay the workers their fair wages.
Or like some dishes out of the kitchen.
Or sell one of your servants, one or the other.
Like that. All right, well, let's get into some of the odds and ends. There were a lot of moving pieces in this episode. So those were like the main storylines that I think we're going to see carried over in major ways in upcoming episodes. But we did have a few other ones come into play. First, we had this meeting between Mr. McNeil and Mr. Watson, where we learned that Mr. Watson was a banker and he was married to Flora's mom. The marriage wasn't going well, and like his wife's dad was like, "Hey, I want you to go away before I die because I don't want you to get any of my money."
Bro, it sounds like Mrs. Mrs. Collier, I guess would have been her name because Watson was Collier. Sounds like her dad was like George Russell. Like that's what it sounds like. Like I'm gonna railroad you and force you to divorce my daughter because I think that's what's best. And then it was such a harrowing story, and I still don't know why he had to change his name. I guess he was so embarrassed by losing all his money that he felt like he had to really kind of get a new identity. But it was a very harrowing and terrible story.
Yeah, I think like the name thing, like everybody knows, like even when we hear Ada, like, do you know that person's a so and so? I know so and so. He was a so and so. Names are pretty much everything at this time. But he gets offered. Mr. McNeil's like, okay, well, we're in quite the pickle. However, I'll give you all this money, buy you an apartment in San Francisco, make sure that you have all of your needs taken care of. You will have house servants. The only thing is like you can never talk to your daughter or your grandchildren again. And so he's got a choice to make here.
I'd be like, listen, I ain't speak to him for what, 20-something years. I'm good. I'll go to San Francisco. I wasn't missing out on nothing anyway. But listen, and the problem is the cat's already out the bag because it's not like Mr. Watson is being secretive about this. He's telling Church. He's telling the other lady. The seal's
all
been
downstairs.
Broken. Yeah. Before you know it, Adelheide's going to be telling John.
He did.
He's going to spread all over the place. So I think it's probably too late, Mr. McNeil. You might as well just kill Mr. Watson if you're going to need to, keep this information from getting out. But I think, it's too late.
Yeah, or he does end up leaving, but then like that all still plays out. Like I could see a world where he's like, okay, I'll go, because you're right. He hasn't talked to his wife or to his kids or his grandkids. And Mr. McNeil was like, I'll keep you updated on their stuff, but just like never write me back. So unless they like send him off and then fake his death in the papers, maybe.
But do you think that Flora had any idea this is happening, or is something behind her back? Yeah.
No, I thought that was
I
weird.
I didn't get the vibe from Flora that she was even into getting to know Watson anyway. But the fact that they brought up the fact that, do you think she knows? I think she probably doesn't know. And I don't know what that's going to lead to, but I'm definitely curious about it because, I mean, Watson's not going anywhere, obviously. So he's going to have to deal with Watson, and Flora's they're going to run into each other again. So what do you think is going to come of this?
Well, if I'm Flora and I find out that my husband sent my dad away and like he thinks that I did it for some reason, like we don't see all of that conversation. So I can only assume that Mr. McNeil told Watson something to get that thought in his head, because he was like really all about it afterwards, after that conversation. I wonder if she will have the same fate as her dad and then be reunited. Like if she will be kicked out of the family.
And do you think Flora knows all the facts that her father railroaded Mr. Watson out of her life, or do you think that Flora thinks that her dad just left her and that she doesn't know that he was forced out of her life?
Yeah, I think that's it, because she was like 3.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. Can't wait
I don't know.
What comes with that.
We shall see. All right. We also had the lunch of soup, the soup lunch that brought together Ada and the rector. What did we think of this budding romance, Jason?
First of all, I was down with Agnes's disgust at being served soup at lunch. It's like, the hell is this in front of me?
He's like,
yeah. What is this?
What is this?
I thought she's going to fire Church right there. Church, the hell are you serving me soup for?
Bannister. But like,
Bannister.
Like more wine.
Well, listen, it's good to see that Bannister and Agnes have repaired their relationship.
Yes.
Enough that Bannister can help her out with some more wine. Well, I loved her disgust at being served soup at lunch. Yeah, and then like Agnes is hating. Agnes is such a freaking hater. We already knew this, but of course Ada brings up like, oh, you love watercolors. What is the rector's name? I have not caught.
I don't know. I just keep calling him the rector because they say your rector.
Yeah. Oh, rector, you like watercolors? I love watercolors. Agnes like, oh yeah, prove it. What's one? Name one artist. But listen, give Ada her credit. She had it locked and loaded and ready. She's like, how about that, Agnes? Like, you try. I like how even Ada was like, oh, you trying to get me, but I know the info. I got it for you. So I love that interplay between all of them. Now, my question is, if we fast forward a little bit to the exhibit, I was worried that the rector actually wants Agnes and not Ada, because he keeps talking about like, I hope Agnes finds me in a good way. I hope Agnes likes me. I thought he's about to be so like, Ada, can you hook me up with Agnes or what? Like I know that you're probably a way to get to Agnes, so I'm just wondering if you could hook me up. I was worried about that, but then he said something else later. I was like, okay, no, he's interested in Ada. It's fine. It's good.
I think he knows that in order for, if he does have endgame plans with Ada, he's gonna need Agnes's approval. Like, and he doesn't want that to be a harder road than before.
And so, I'm gonna need Wilson from House. I don't know the actor's name.
Yeah.
I would need him to work on his Boston accent, because it came in every now and then. I was like, I could like it's really got to in and out this Boston accent. I need you to kind of keep it together, Mr. Wilson from House.
What did you think of his Sleepless in Seattle approach to asking Ada out? Of like, I will be there at 4 p.m. if you also want to be there at 4 p.m.
I will be in the area. I will be around that part of town if you just happen to wander in as well. I just thought that was just delightful and fun. This whole relationship is nothing but a nice little sweet treat in the middle of these scandalous episodes.
I also liked Marion's like, I'll walk with you and then I'll leave you. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
These ladies just plotting behind Agnes's back, and just look out for one another. You gotta love the sisterhood there of trying to defeat the old beast Agnes. Speaking of old beast Agnes, what did you feel about Miss Astor being like, Agnes, since you're like super old, I need you to talk to other super old people, and threaten them and threaten their seats. I thought that was, and Agnes didn't even bat an eye. She's like, "Yep, I got it. Like, no problem.
You got that, Peggy? You got it? You good?"
Yeah. I'll talk to my other geriatrics and get them on board.
I thought it was funny too, because she's like, I can't say it because then they'll think it's a real threat or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you totally could say it, but she has to keep her hands clean. So
yeah, and we didn't mention McAllister much, but I loved his little sneaky run across the street to the Van Ryans. I love that so much.
It's such a lovely day. I think I'll go for a walk.
And then he snitches on Miss Russell, and Marion is like, well, it's gonna make people have to pick a side. And I was like, why would you say something like that? Like, what do you like? How dare you say something like, because he knows he's one of those people that's got to pick a side. Love
and
that.
Agnes like, I'm glad we're all united in this house.
Sure, yeah, we're definitely all the same here. I did want to run a theory by you that was brought up on our YouTube by one of our viewers, TribeMaster07. Says that there's a theory out there that Mr. McAllister is not really Bertha's friend and is secretly helping Mrs. Astor bring down the Russell family. The theory is that McAllister knows that Larry and Mrs. Blaine will start hooking up, and that he knows Miss Turner used to work for the Russell family, and he might use that information to humiliate Bertha Russell.
Well,
when the time is right.
I think Mr. McAllister is always for Mr. McAllister. Like, I think he's his own number one there, but he does have a lot of information that is not looking good for the Russells, and Larry is not helping.
Freaking Larry, he's sowing those wild
oats. Not helping. Like, he's. Do you want to go to the reception after the play?
Or you want to
just go home?
Yeah, you want to go back home, girl. He is lost in the sauce. He is hypnotized by my Mrs. Blaine's wildly ways. And listen, I had to check myself for a moment when that scene with Mrs. Blaine and Larry in her house.
In the house.
I was like, oh my, like what am I watching? Like, what channel am I on? Well, Skinamax right now? Oh,
she was all like, I will reward you. I was like, what is happening? Where are we?
I think she's gonna get a different treat than
Marion.
Dash is gonna give to Marion.
Yeah, I this is gonna come back to hurt the Russell family. I'm just
100%.
waiting for it,
100%.
and I could totally see to our friend on YouTube's point, like I could totally see Mr. McAllister using it. I could also see somebody seeing them
Out and about.
out and about, and what if that is Mrs. Winterton even, and that giving more ammunition to that, or Mrs. Russell herself. Like,
Yeah, she will.
it would
I mean, she kind of
be,
knows already, right? Like, it wouldn't be anything too shocking to her. But the fact that they'd
yes.
be out in public, flaunting about the relationship would just send her to another level.
It does remind me of a moment in the Big Brother 25 finale where a secret was revealed and a mother was not happy. Like, it's like one of those. Like, I'm going to talk to you afterwards. Like, let's go.
Grab him by the ear, like, let's go. We're going. We're leaving now.
I got things to talk about. So even though we are shipping Larry and Marion, Marion is all up on Dashiell at the moment, cousin Dashiell. And I did want to point out, thank you to Nick and on the Discord for reminding us that in Downton Abbey there was a love story between a cousin and the heiress of the family. So this may be a recycled storyline. We'll have to see how it plays out. But Dashiell, what do you think of Dashiell's game in this situation? He's written to Agnes, declared his fondness. He owes her a treat. And then he basically said, my daughter is really sad about this mother-daughter tea.
Listen, would you like? Dash knew what he was doing. He's like, I just wish there was somebody around that, could maybe be a surrogate mother figure.
What?
Do you know anyone around, Marion, that might fit that bill? And Marion just fell right into the trap.
Yeah, she was like, I know I'm not a substitute. However, and I was like, oh, Marion, that's just like, that's a mess. That's a mess in itself.
Yeah. Don't do this, Marion. First of all, you're not even officially courting this man, and now you are, stepping in as mommy. Ooh. And I don't know what it is, but something tells me that Dash's douche vibes have yet to
for sure
bring themselves up to surface, and Mary's going to get so invested in this. She's going to get invested in Francis, and he's going to do something that's going to make her be like, oh my god, I cannot be with this man. But you've already invested yourself, Mary, and I think she's going to feel bad about it, and maybe she'll stay in a relationship she doesn't want for the kids' sake. I'm very much future casting, but I don't know. I just think there's something to be discovered about Dashiell. I don't trust him. I don't trust those beady eyes.
Well, and he's like too good.
Yeah, for sure.
I need some dirt on this man to understand that he is human. Like, there's nothing thus far that has shown us that he's nothing but an upstanding gentleman that is a single father, and like, which appeals to Marion because it's against the grain of the time. Like, I totally get that. But I don't know anything about him for me to like root for them.
But I feel like Marion attracts a type at this point because he's just like Tom, who, all goody goody until the douche vibes come out. And then she'll finally be with her one true love, Larry. Hashtag Larry in for life.
After Larry calms himself down a bit. Because right now
after he gets whatever is in a system out of a system.
Well, Marion should have that opportunity too. That's all I'm saying.
For sure.
Okay, speaking of, I don't know what we're speaking of, but I do want to speak about Oscar Wilde and his appearance on the show. So delightful. He was definitely popular during the time. He is well known of being a gay man during this time, retroactively. Like, I don't think that they knew during the time, but we know as living in the future. So he walks in to this party, all the vibes. He's just vibe checking everybody. He's witty. He's picking up on, he's like, ooh, Oscar, John, check. Like, and then tells Mrs. Fane, like, you were brought up too good. You don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He's the life of this party.
You're too innocent to see it, what I'm seeing. Yeah, you're too innocent to see it, but I got it. All he had to do was look across the room, and Oscar and John Adams were like, I see y'all. I see you. And then I also love when he's just talking to the people.
Oscar's adjusting bow tie. Like
Yeah.
Oscar.
He's not doing well to hide it in front of other people, especially Oscar, who has the vibes down. I also loved how Oscar's like, basically being able to tell that people hated his play.
Yeah. But then he's like, yeah, that's okay. Like, I'll write another one. He's using this party to also like get into the society as well, because he was like, thank you for having me over so that I can step into society. I really hope he sticks around. He seems very fun and can really make the Oscar Van Ryn storyline a little bit more appealing than a repeat of last season, for me at least.
Yeah, what'd you think of John Adams being like, "Hey, I got me a new main squeeze."
Oh yeah, you did, John.
Yeah, maybe I'll introduce you. If you behave yourself. And Oscar is obviously very jealous of that.
I love John's response because Oscar asks him, "Are you happy with him?" He's like, "I'm happy with me. That's all I need." And I was like, "Yeah, John.
Good on you, John Adams.
Yeah,
live your best life."
How do you think Oscar Van Ryn is dealing with his new prospect in, I think, Miss Beale? Miss Beaton. How do you think? I think like they're chummy at this point. They're laughing.
Yeah, we did come up with a theory last week that maybe they will come to some sort of arrangement. I think we're on a good track for that. I think they like each other. I think they get along. I think that's the best you can ask for, especially if you're, coming with a fake relationship. If you're going to be living in the same house, but not, doing what couples do, at least be with someone that you can stand and you like and you get along with. So I think that might be what's playing out here.
Well, Agnes seems to be happy about it because her first question was like, "Does she have money?"
She got money, right? All right, all good then.
Okay.
Damn,
she passes.
Agnes is cold-blooded.
Yeah. Well, one final question: how do we think we see the Mrs. Winterton playing out? Obviously, I think Bertha's gotta win, right? At the end of it. Or do you think they're gonna?
I don't think she's gotta win. Here's the thing: we know that the servants know that Mrs. Turner is Mrs. Turnerton. So I think that this will get out. I don't think Bertha even has to expose it. I think it'll get out through the grapevine. And at that point where Mrs. Turnerton is exposed, she will go scorched earth on Bertha and hold nothing back and will reveal everything and possibly, lie about what happened. So I think that might be where we're going with this. How do you think this is going to go?
I could see that working also a little bit in Bertha's favor, because if word gets out that Mrs. Turnerton was a lady's maid, also through the scuttlebutt of the households talking all up and down 61st, that could also have a positive impact for Bertha. I do think Mrs. Turnerton has more resources than we know, and I think it is a big danger for Bertha, and she's going to get checked. Like she kind of like stampeded over Mrs. Astor last season. It was like, I'm going to bring my husband to buy out this entire charity thing. I'm going to like do all this stuff. She got to the top of the pyramid, and now I think she's got to be like knocked down a little. I think in the end she will. I mean, we know the Met is going to win in some capacity in the future. So I know she's going to come out on top, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as it was last season, for sure.
Listen, Mrs. Astor is a high society lady and would probably refrain from getting down in the mud with a Mrs. Russell. I don't think Mrs. Turnerton has any of those reservations. I think she's gonna bring Mrs. Russell down into the mud with her if need be. So I think that's going to be very interesting. It's a really great adversary for Mrs. Russell, and I'm happy that they decided to take the turn, if you will, into the storyline for Mrs. Turnerton to be the adversary of Mrs. Russell this season.
Yeah, and just keep giving us those looks, those side eyes across the room. Like I'll take them all day. It's the best.
for sure.
It'll be interesting. And also, like, this Pete guy, how's he gonna fall into it and all of this stuff? So
is Pete gonna be a Turnerton booty call because she's not happy with Mr. Winterton? Like, you know, maybe he doesn't they don't do it like she wanted to be done, so she's gonna go find Pete, and maybe that will also be another bullet in the gun for Mrs. Russell.
Yeah, there's many things at play. It'll be interesting to see how it all works out there. Anything else on season 2, episode 3, Head to Head, Jason?
I think we covered it. I'm still excited for what's to come. Still loving the show, so I can't wait to talk more Gilded Age with you in the future.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens in the next one. Maybe I'll be more excited, like 2 more. I think the next one's going to be pretty heavy. The one after that was probably going to be pretty good. Again, if you are looking for our library of podcasts about the Gilded Age, you can go to postshowrecaps.com/Gilded Age in your podcast catcher of choice and get our entire series of podcasts, first season and where we are here in the second season. You can also find us in the HBO feed, or really like any feed that Post Show Recaps has out. Just search for Gilded Age in Post Show Recaps in your podcatcher, and you will find us one way or another. If you're looking for ad-free versions of this podcast, you can get access to them by going to patreon.com/postshowrecaps and get access to our exclusive podcast feed. You also get access to a Discord community where we talk about things. I did find like a TikTok of this lady who was dressing up in an 1880s tennis dress. And I shared it in the Discord. So if you're interested in random posts like that, feel free to join us on Patreon. And if you're looking for the latest and greatest in terms of what Post Show Recaps has going on, postshowrecaps.com/subscribe will list off. And I can tell you on that list, you're going to see a lot of my friend Jason Reed. He's got a lot going on. Jason, let the people know.
Yeah, I got a couple things going on right now over here on Post Show Recaps. I'm covering Loki with Sasha Joseph. We just wrapped up this season, more than likely the way that ended probably the series of Loki. So come check me out there. We had a great time talking about that. Also here on Post Show Recaps, I'm talking Invincible with Gia Worthy. The second season of that has just started up, and we had a lot of fun talking about the second episode this week. Also here on Post Show Recaps, I talked Lawman Bass Reeves with Chappelle for Post Show Recaps, aka The Connect, their little collective they have there. We had a great time talking about that, where we think it's probably going to be a one and done, but we talked about the first and second episode premiere of that show. Had a blast doing that. And if you want me to hear me talk more mess, over on the Rob Has Podcast or Hap Ups Network, I talk about the show Married at First Sight. On my podcast, A Perfect Match, I do with Asia Welch. We have so much fun on that podcast talking about the nonsense of people that probably would make a lot of these people blush on the Gilded Age. So if you want to hear that,
maybe not Larry.
Nonsense, yeah. Oh, Larry would be perfect on Married at First Sight. He would be so good. But yeah, if you want to hear me talk about those nonsense people, check me out over on the Rob Has Podcast or Have Ups Network, and also our Love at First Sight feed. So yeah, that's it for me. How about you, Marissa?
Well, right now I'm just kicking it here on the Gilded Age with you. We'll see what's up in the future. You can find me on Twitter at MarsBars, MarzBars, if you're interested. Otherwise, I'm just learning about the 1800s. Yeah. That's pretty much what I got going on. Yeah. Well, thanks so much. If you've listened to this point and anytime throughout this podcast, we appreciate you. And thank you so much. And until next time, good day, Mr. Reed.
Good day, Miss Garza.